We're ready to roll.
We're good? Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Hope everyone had a great holiday season. Calling to order the meeting of the Town Commission of January 6th, 2020 at 6 p.m. Carla, can you read the roll call?
Mayor Cos,
Here.
Commissioner DeHassett,
Present.
Commissioner Herbert,
Here.
Vice Mayor Magruder. Let the record show Commissioner Bessler is absent with notice.
Stand for the pledge. Okay, additions, deletions, modification, and approval of agenda. Does anybody have any of the above? Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
Let's
So
approve the agenda as listed.
Second?
Yes, second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous, Carla. Okay, we have a special presentation tonight by the City National Bank Service. Richard Foster is going to take the podium.
Thank you. Happy late New Year, everybody. So I work for City National Bank, Vice President. We're the third largest bank in Florida, about $16 billion in assets. I have the privilege personally of banking a lot of cities, municipalities in Florida, and a lot of homeowner associations. So I always like to offer any services to any of the staff, residents, family, friends, any banking questions or any refinances. We'd be happy to take a free look, for anybody. Happy to leave my cards on the outside. I also brought my mortgage partner, Kevin, just to say a few words. Sure.
So, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. We always like to consider ourselves a relationship bank, and obviously we have a relationship here with the town. My job is as a mortgage banker with City National Bank. And there's a number of special services that we offer to clients of the bank that a lot of other banks maybe in the area don't, and so to be able to share those with you here today is a special privilege. So at City National, we do offer a full line of portfolio lending products, jumbo and super jumbo loans, and we do some special things really with our credit underwriting. We're flexible. So for clients of the bank, we can underwrite deals a little bit differently than traditionally some other people might be able to in terms of flexibility with documenting income, the ability to underwrite loans and approve loans based on liquidity, which is pretty unique. And we can be flexible with credit guidelines as well. We also offer a line of professional products. So we have professional lending for attorneys, doctors, which go to very high loan to values at higher loan limits. Those are special because we also produce those at market rates and then also pay the mortgage insurance on those. So to be able to go to 97% and pay mortgage insurance is something that's pretty unique in the marketplace. We have construction lending. So if any of your residents are building houses, we're very happy to offer them construction lending services. We offer a construction permanent program, which is a one-time close, so it saves them on costs, and we can go ahead and close that and then term the loan once the construction's complete for permanent financing for that as well. So those are some of the benefits to doing business with us. We certainly welcome the opportunity to speak with any of your residents. If they'd like, we can leave our information, and we're happy to serve the
Anybody
town.
got any questions for the gentleman?
Can I make a comment? I just want to comment that we switched to City National Bank almost a year ago, and their service has been outstanding for the town. Just want to commend you for that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you
We're
very
happy
much.
to be part of it, and we appreciate the opportunity, so thank you for everything. Happy New Year, and everybody have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carla, announcements?
The next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting will be held on January 13th at 8 a.m. at Town Hall. The next Septic to Sewer Citizens Advisory Committee meeting will be held on January 9th at 8:30 a.m. at Town Hall. The next regular Town Commission meeting will be held on February 3rd at 6 p.m. at Town Hall. The Town Hall will be closed on January 20th in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. There will be no municipal election in March as only 2 candidates qualified to fill the Town Commission seats. The candidates that qualified are Susan Herbert and Martin Wasilek. The two candidates will be sworn into office on March 18th, 2020. The presidential preference primary election will still be held at Town Hall on March 17th, 2020. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. There will be a meet and greet with the incoming Town Commissioner Martin Weishalek at Town Hall on Wednesday, March 4th, beginning at 6 p.m. Please join us for a light refreshments and conversations. Residents who wish to sign up to receive town notifications through Civic Ready should sign up on the town's website or call Town Hall for assistance. Next on the agenda is public comment. The mayor will invite the public to speak to the Town Commission on any item that is not printed on the agenda. Public comment on a specific item may be made later in the meeting when the item are taken up in the agenda. There's a 3-minute individual limit for public comment that will be timed by the town clerk. Public comment is not meant to be a question and answer period, and there will be no dialogue. Anybody wishing to speak during public comment will approach the podium and state their name and address for the record, and see town clerk after speaking to fill out a comment card in order for the minutes to be properly recorded. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Public comment. We almost got away once again.
Terry Brown, Harvard Drive South. I'm sort of not here to embarrass Commissioner Don Magruder, but I wanted to jumpstart congratulations for a successful term on the commission, particularly the issue of sea level rise and flooding, and you were successful in getting the rest of the commissions to join the consortium of the other low-lying municipalities who are looking at this issue and trying to come up with a solution. You had a failure or two, but overall you did a great job, and I just want to congratulate you, and we'll keep doing it until you leave. Of course, he solved the problem of elevation. He plans to move to North Carolina. Now he's really embarrassed.
We don't have to give him a plaque now.
Yeah, right. Well, make it a golden one with a little special star on it for his efforts, because he'd spent a lot of time doing stuff. The other thing I wanted to bring up is a little story regarding the wall at the Porter Street walkway between A1A and Old Ocean. I don't think there's too many people left, maybe Mark or Betty Bingham's not here. When there was a restaurant there, the city of Boynton, in all their graciousness, gave the town coconut palms through a federal program, a green program, and they planted the coconut palms on the restaurant side of the property line. So when the developer bought the property, they said to the town, we got to move those coconut palms, they're on our property, but we'll do a little horse trading with you. If you allow us to put our wall right on the property line and not set it back 3 feet, which is a requirement under the code, we will move the coconut palms to your side of the property and replant them with a professional tree service, and they did that. But part of the agreement was that they're supposed to take care of that wall. They're supposed to clean it, pressure clean it, and paint it. And I've been here way before that wall went up, and they've done that one time. So someone needs to deal with the people in Portofino about taking care of that wall. It's full of mold and mildew, and it looks really bad. The other issue with that wall is that the village of Ocean Ridge was allowed to repave all of their paving and parking without improving their catch basins to retain the water. So if you go along that walkway, you'll see the water up along the wall that comes from the villas. So the villas, which is a private corporation, is using town property for their water runoff. So maybe they could get together and get some paint on that wall and pressure clean it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, approval of the consent agenda, Carla?
Adopt minutes of regular town commission meeting of December 2nd, 2019. Authorize town manager Stevens to sign the small project completion and certification form for Hurricane Matthew, and further authorize town manager Stevens to sign all FEMA grant paperwork in reference to Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Dorian. Approve the First Amendment to Agreement for Iguana Management Services with Blue Iguana Pest Control, Inc., and authorize town manager Stevens to sign said agreement.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Sure, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, we're on to regular agenda items. Resolution number 2020-01, amending the employee handbook. Tracy?
Carla, do you read the caption?
Resolution number 2020-01, a resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Ocean Ridge, Florida, amended the employee handbook, providing for repeal of prior resolutions and conflicts and providing for an effective date.
Okay. When the employee handbook was originally written, suspension of leave time was addressed in the leaves of absence section, but not for the workers' comp leave or the short or long-term disability leave sections of the policy. The proposed changes will address this by suspending sick and vacation accruals that are on the books for the duration of an employee's workers' comp leave or short or long-term disability leave, which decreases the town's financial liability. The proposed changes have been reviewed for legal sufficiency, and we recommend approval of the resolution as submitted.
I wanted to thank Tracy and Brian for bringing this to our attention. Thank you. Any public comment? Okay. Commission comments?
I'd just like to say that we've been through this process probably about 3 meetings. We've looked at it, and the administrative staff, along with the commission, has done a great job in updating it. And I would like to make a motion to approve the resolution 2020-01, amending the employee handbook as submitted.
A second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, we are on to resolution number, item number 3, 2020-02. Strongly encouraging the state legislature to approve Senate Bill 182. Tracy?
Carla, if you want to read the caption.
Resolution number 2020-02, a resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Ocean Ridge, Florida, strongly encouraging the state legislature to approve Senate Bill 182 and any companion House bill relating to the preemption of recyclables and polystyrene materials by amending Section 403.7033 and Section 500.90 Florida statutes, repealing the preemption of local laws regarding the use or sale of single-use plastic bags and polystyrene materials.
Okay, so Thomas Bradford, the former town manager of Tequesta and Palm Beach, sent the letter to the town commission requesting support for the attached resolution that urges the state legislature to approve Senate Bill 182 and any companion bills that would repeal the preemption of local law so that cities and towns can control its own laws regarding the use of single-use plastic bags. I believe Commissioner Hurlbert may want to speak briefly on this. She asked that we include this on the agenda.
Right, we spoke about this at a League of Cities luncheon where Boca and several of the other communities have talked about home rule again, being able to make our own situations instead of having the state preempt us from doing something. So it's an environmentally positive piece of legislation, and we're just putting our support behind it with the other local municipalities.
And by the way, at the mayor's meeting with Caruso,
Right.
Representative Caruso, he's going to be our champion on home rule.
That's what I understood, so that's a good thing.
Yeah. Does everyone know what home rule is? The state puts a law through that preempts our local ordinances and our local way of doing business. So we're trying to stop any form of the state dictating all these small town policies that we currently dictate. Okay, so do we have any
Any
public comment? Commission discussion? Do I hear a motion?
I will move to approve resolution number 2020-02 for, what is our bill here?
182 plus any companion bills. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Unanimous.
Mayor, this resolution calls for the signature of each town commissioner. If you would see Carla after the meeting to sign that would be
Everyone
great.
get that? Okay. Okay, item number 4, first reading of ordinance number 2019-15. This is to do with artificial turf.
Ordinance number 2019-15, an ordinance of the Town of Ocean Ridge, Florida, amending its code of ordinances by amending Chapter 1, General Provisions, Section 1-3, Definitions, amending Chapter 66, Environmental Regulations, Article 4, Landscaping, Division 2, Water Efficient Landscape, Section 66-141, Water Efficient Landscape Code, enacting Section 66-142, Artificial Turf/Synthetic Grass, to provide for regulations regarding artificial turf/synthetic grass, providing for codification, repeal of conflicting ordinances, their ability, and an effective date.
Okay, you want to start with Brian? We're fortunate enough to have Mark Marsh here as well.
Well, I will just quickly kind of give you a little bit of background on this. At your last commission meeting, the ordinance was in front of you at that time. However, it was not in front of you for a vote, just kind of for discussion, because the town had, just a day or two before that, had received some input from the town's planner regarding the version of the ordinance that had went to P&Z, where the planner had made some comments, primarily changing the definition of landscaping, change in 66-141 on turf areas to remove the definition of, or to remove sod as language in there, because we can provide for artificial turf. There was also some other language, some other modifications, such as having the color approved by the town building official, and then some clarification on the locations allowed to make it clear that the locations that this would be allowed would be only 25% in the side, or 25% of the area of the side or rear yard, not including the building footprint. And it does not include the area of the front yard, but regardless of that, it can't be placed in any side or rear yard that is visible from the public. There is also another provision in there that had been in a previous provision that basically provides that within 10 years, if you do adopt this ordinance, within 10 years of the adoption of this ordinance, any existing artificial turf that is currently in Ocean Ridge would need to comply with these terms and conditions, with the terms of the ordinance. So that's basic. And in the meantime, after the meeting there in December, on December the 2nd, we took it back to P&Z. P&Z looked at the changes and was okay with the changes, and so the ordinance that you have in front of you is the one that also came out of P&Z, but it was also the one you'd previously seen.
Right, but I thought at the December meeting, the town commission meeting, we had some other things we wanted examined and possibly changed, which I don't see reflected in this. So maybe it's time to move on to Mark, if you'd be so kind.
Okay, good evening. Mark Marsh, 14 Hudson, Vice Chair of the P&Z Board. Yeah, I actually was the instigator of this. I'll take full responsibility, because I was walking one morning and tripped and fell on what I thought was sod, and it was a artificial turf lawn. We have gone back and forth on this, and I think staff and the planner, town's planner, have, I think, identified some of the issues. A lot of research was done with other communities. This was not just a solo effort to try to create a new ordinance. So we reviewed those other municipalities. There were some things that didn't apply to us. And I think with all the discussion that's happened, I can't speak to what Mayor Kazi, what elements were not addressed by this.
The 25%, the front yard, and the 10-year moratorium.
Those are all there within.
No, we discussed that those weren't necessarily part of an ordinance that we wanted. But I didn't hear any discussion. I don't see any change.
No, we supported all those three items unanimously at the P&Z, because we felt that, the impact, if you allowed front yard use of artificial turf, it would just change the complexion of the town totally. So we didn't want to deny people from the ability to use it for rear yards, side yards, for dogs, whatever, that are more durable. But the idea was to keep it from public view.
Right, and that was another point. There was, if you can't, why are we banning the front yard? If you can't see it, who cares what's in the front yard?
Well, it's just a precedent, because you get into a definition of front yard, whether you have a wall or screen or buffer, it's still, the front yard is a very sensitive element to the community, in in terms of, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that if you have a
A
wall,
wall or a hedge. and you
yeah,
wanna
but
put-
it's still, it would set a precedent that I think would be challenged all the way through.
Unless the wording was that it couldn't be seen from the street or right of way.
Yeah, then that becomes an interpretive situation. So I think it's,
All of it becomes interpretive, the 25%.
yeah, I think, I mean, if a person or a resident has due cause to think that they can screen it totally, then they can bring it to the town of P and Z and see if it's a unique enough case, rather than, I just think it's dangerous to put a broad brush allowance there. So that's.
Okay. So
But
will
I
it be
think
available-
the elements that Brian just read address some of the issues. Front yard was one, side, and time limit for compliance for pre-existing. As you all know, there are many different forms of I call it astroturf, but artificial turf. So we didn't want to create a whole checkerboard of these systems throughout the town.
So are you going to be available for the next 15 minutes if questions arise?
Yes.
Good, excellent. So we'll go to public comment first.
Hi, my name is John Zessen, 6029 Old Ocean Boulevard. I recently finished my house on the ocean, and on an environmentally friendly basis, I put in artificial turf because it is more artificially friendly. It's more attractive than Florida grass that you can grow in the ocean. I don't use any water on the turf. I don't use any fertilizer on the turf. And as a result, I'm not putting things into my sand dune. I'm not putting things that would potentially affect the turtle life on the beach. And so if we're voting to have more of that in our community, I don't think it's the right thing to vote on. And I really support the use of, especially in my case, I have recycled polypropylene turf. So it's a product that's been recycled from other plastic usage and brought to life in the form of a really good-looking lawn. So I would strongly ask you to reconsider what you're thinking about.
Thank you.
Now, may I ask your address again, please?
6029 Old Ocean Boulevard.
Any other public comment? Okay, commissioner comment?
I'll kick it off. There wasn't a 100% consensus on the dais at the December meeting as to the changes that were being requested. And I spoke with Jerry Garay this morning, knowing that he couldn't be here. But thank you, Mark, for attending and representing P&Z. I know that you guys spent the better part of 4 months on this. This is not a very quick or very easy, and when we thought we were going to get back something very simple, it talks about the height, the color, the location, the angle. So I think that you guys have exhausted in terms of what you looked at. I was one on the dais that thought 10 years was too long. I thought, 2 and go. And with all due respect, I understand the environmental issues, but I think this is as much a community character issue. And one of the things that we pride ourselves with in this town is lush vegetation. And we have exhausted number of codes that have to deal with our landscaping. So some direction was needed prior to this becoming the norm rather than the exception. So I'd just like to thank P&Z for all the work they did. The tweaks that I would make would actually make it more restrictive, but I'm happy to be in a compromised position because I do know that we do have some stuff that's already there and is working very well for the residents. So I'd just like to say thank you, and I think I'm in support of what is being presented tonight.
I agree. I thought the 10 years was actually very generous, and we discussed it, and again, in the spirit of compromise and what have you. I thought that all the work that's been done here is a great compromise.
I'm not in agreement with this ordinance whatsoever. As I said at the last meeting, I don't particularly like the look of artificial turf, but it's a private property issue with me. If I can't see what's inside your wall, what's on the other side of your hedge, then you should be allowed to do what you so choose. My problem with now getting into this artificial turf issue, artificial grass, is what's next? Are we gonna be going after white plastic fence? Are we gonna be going after white plastic gates that we don't like? And actually, I know John brought up the environmental impact on this. Just the last resolution we just voted on was about plastic straws and plastic bags being bad for the environment. What we're actually voting on here is worse for the environment than not not allowing artificial turf. I actually did some research on this because I was curious. This is according to the EPA. The average American family of four uses 400 gallons of water a day, much of it on yard maintenance. The water conservation benefit takes on an even more environmentally friendly significance. That also includes the use of pesticides and herbicides. The EPA also reports that Pushmore emits as much pollution in 1 hour as 11 cars, and Riding Moore emits as much as 34 cars. The EPA also states that grass clippings are the third largest component of municipal solid waste in landfills. So to be approaching this from an environmental standpoint falls apart. Now, we also have people in town that already have putting greens, okay? Now, this ordinance calls for the grass to be 1.5 inches tall, let's call it, right? The putting greens that are available and that are installed in town are 1/2 inch thick to 3/4 inch thick. That's what the professionally installed putting greens are. We also have some issues in the actual wording, which I'll go through, which will probably bore everyone. But when we're sitting here in a situation where we have drainage issues in town, the more the sprinklers are running, the more drainage problems we have. Artificial turf does not require water, so I think that's something to take into account. Now, the 10-year rule, that forcing someone that has artificial turf at their property, that they have to get rid of that in 10 years, I think that is grossly unfair. How would you feel if the town put through an ordinance about the color of your house, or they came out with a palette for colors of houses, and they told you that within the next 10 years you had to conform to that palette? You would not like that, right? The 25% of the rear and side yard, and Mark will know this, if you have a courtyard house, that is a very tiny area. And I don't know how many of you had kids. I had kids, and in the backyard, they had lacrosse nets, trampolines, and it was always a muddy mess back there. Back then, there wasn't attractive artificial turf available. I probably would have put it there, Mark, to stop the mess that was coming in the house from the kids back there. The way this ordinance is written, it penalizes people that have a large front yard. Now, what is a front yard? That's the next question, right? Well, you have to go to the P&Z, the board, I don't even know where you go at that point. You ask Wayne. I know this puts Wayne in a horrible spot, because Wayne's gonna have to decide if the color of the grass and the direction of the grass, the actual slant of the grass, is qualified by the standard. You're depending on Wayne's visual acuity at that point. Now, thank God he's not colorblind, right? Do we know? So,
But you were the one that asked for the color to be addressed in the ordinance.
that's correct.
Okay.
Right. So my whole point is that a lot of people have stuff in their yard that we can't see. And we don't complain about it because it's behind a hedge, it's behind a wall. So I would agree to an ordinance that says you cannot see it from a public right-of-way or from a road sidewalk, for instance, like that. Now, the other thing I think citizens should be aware of is the town and the utility company can come in and rip up your artificial turf if they need to get to the ground beneath it. That's in this ordinance as well. Now, to replace artificial turf, I'm sure John knows this, is much more expensive than buying 10, 20 pieces of sod and replacing it. And that's on the homeowner. So if something happens to happen on your street and they have to intrude into your yard and rip up your artificial turf, you have to replace it. So for those various reasons, I'm not against the visual concept. I just think we're approaching it in a wrongful fashion.
Rick, your turn. You go ahead.
Rick Carey,
39 Spanish River Drive, also on the Planning and Zoning Commission. As Commissioner Marsh and Vice Chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission outlined, a lot of time went into reviewing what is done in other communities here in South Florida on this ordinance. There are many that are much more conservative in their requirements. We tried to keep in mind that we're a town that likes to not dictate paint color, as you mentioned, and allow some amount of being an eclectic community. But we felt that part of one of the things that is huge in this community is the lushness of it, the verdant nature, the sense of that it's a coastal paradise, and that we didn't feel that artificial turf met that criteria, and we very much were concerned about the visual, which is what you also agree with. Right. But there also becomes how to manage this and to give good direction to our staff as to how to take this when permits are requested, and to create some flexibility. And I believe we discussed the putting green issue and gave some flexibility to staff on that issue too. So,
Right, but it's verbal flexibility.
you know,
Per code, you have to put 1.5.
Well, actually, that was some of the language we changed. We talked about, having a minimum pile height of 1.5 and a half, or 1.5 inches unless otherwise approved by the town building official. So there is that in there, but once again, that's up to the building official.
we're certainly not trying to take away putting greens.
Yeah, I don't call
That's
it.
not. So, but, one of the things that I think needs to be understood is that these artificial turf, like paint on a house, like carpet in your home, has a life. The warranties are typically in the 6 to 8 year range. It was based on those warranty issues that we agreed on. First, we spoke of 8 years and then extended it to 10 years. It's going to need to be replaced in a 10-year period regardless. If we have somebody who has it longer than that, it's well beyond its expected
Except
life.
the way the
So it's not
ordinance is written.
it's not penalizing somebody. And somebody who may have already had it in for a year or more, so they're getting through this ordinance an 11-year life. I think that we've tried very hard to create balance. It's not going to meet everybody's expectations. I can see that it doesn't yours, Mayor.
All I
But there
care
were-
about is the visual,
Big part.
which is what you guys were attacking. I don't understand the need for all this language to attack the visual. If you can't see it, it's okay.
Okay.
Now, one thing you just said, that again, the ordinance, if somebody was clever, they could get around this ordinance. Yes, you need to repair there's an 8-year to 10-year window, right? So let's say, and if you repair more than 50%, you have to remove the entire 100%.
That's correct.
Well, what would you do? You would repair 30%, next year 30%, next year 40%.
But
And
there's gonna
we
be
discussed
exceptions
that,
to
and I
every
think,
ordinance.
I think
I
the final ordinance was, you can do those things, but that doesn't get around the 10-year rule. Am I correct on that?
Yes, correct.
Just letting you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the thought is, if you can't see it, then you should be allowed. Well, then, we might as well stop discussing sheds. We might as well not discuss boat trailers. We might as well not discuss mobile homes. We might as well, not discuss garbage cans that overflow. I think that is a false foundation on which to stand, so.
The other thing that wasn't brought up earlier is that where artificial turf is used in driveways or sidewalk areas, the ordinance allows for that. Whether that's from the front of the house, 4 inches, and that's an appropriate use. So we were
we
Well, I
discussed.
appreciate your efforts. I
Yeah,
just
we discussed
disagree with the
things,
results.
following at the last P and Z meeting. We reviewed the comments. I wasn't at the last commission meeting, but I listened to that and all the comments and your comments, and those were discussed and considered.
Thanks, Rick.
Not to-
You're moving to North Carolina.
I'm not moving to North Carolina. No, I think this is a great start. Like any ordinance, it's subject to challenge down the road. But I think we've, as Rick said, and I speak on behalf of the commission, a lot of time was spent and staff to go through this. You keep mentioning front setback. That's the most, I think, important element of any planning and zoning is the front yard. So I'm very resistive about trying to make accommodations for things that don't comply necessarily. Because the front yard is what sets this tone for this community or any community. So I think it's a very sacrosanct area, so we got to be very careful to protect it. And to your questions or points, backyards, you can have, artificial turf, side yards. It's just the fact that if you give up your front yard, I
But the
think
front yard doesn't count in the calculation of the 25%, the way it's been explained to me.
no, it
Like, I've drawn, this was actually drawn out in a staff meeting. I don't know if you can see that, if you want to take a look at it.
no, I could see it.
Okay, so there's your front yard, there's your house, there's your backyard side.
25% of your open space, which includes the front yard.
Oh, then that's totally.
No,
No,
it doesn't. It doesn't include the front. It's
Oh,
only
yeah, the front,
right,
sorry,
it's
yeah.
only
We
25%
changed
of the
it,
side and the
sorry.
rear,
Yeah,
right.
that's
Yes.
We did change that, sorry.
Are you aware of that change?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
So you want this ordinance to be 25% of whatever side yard and backyard you
Rear
have.
yard, right.
And that land does not include a patio extended off the house that has a roof over it.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Just so we all
Yeah.
understand the
Yeah.
language here. Okay. Yes.
John Zessin again, 6029 Old Ocean. When I did my renovation to my house, I went through a lot with this group. A lot of things that I thought were significant burdens to somebody that was trying to improve the property. And to me, I think the big issue here is the overreach of this council on what your preference is on your property. And so I guess I'm going to ask you, are you now going to put in effect laws about the color of the natural grass that people have growing in their yard, the height of the natural grass? Are you going to put into effect how much pea stone can be put in the front yard as opposed to grass? Or where is it all going to lead? I have a piece of landscaping that I think looks beautiful. 2 doors down from me, 3 doors down from me, somebody let my neighbor paint their house Grecian blue. I think that's more offensive than anything I've got on my property. And yet, that happens. And, I can bitch about it, I can be unhappy about it, but it happens, and I guess that's okay. But at some point in time, where does the overreach stop? Where do you guys get to a point in time and say you own the property, and you get to make the decisions on that property, regardless of whether I like the look of it or I don't?
John, you listed, you say your property's on Old Ocean, but it's actually on Anna Street.
Technically, the address is over.
The address is Old Ocean.
It's Old Ocean, correct. And I will say, and Mark Marsh and I disagreed on when you were developing your property. I liked the way it looked from the street. Mark had objections to how it looked from the beach. So there we go. But I will say that if all of the artificial grass that was put into Ocean Ridge was done as well as yours, I probably wouldn't object to it, because you really did a good job. And I agree with you on the blue. Unfortunately, everyone does not do the job that you had done. And if you run around or you walk around Ocean Ridge, you will see some properties that are artificial that you can't tell they're artificial, and you'll see others that are just glare at you. And so that's why we're we're about ready to pass the first reading of this ordinance to try and control how the town looks overall. We're taking steps right now with P&Z to do away with some of the plantings of palms in all the homes. We're looking to go to hardwood trees in the front yards and whatnot. So that's another environmental issue that we're working on P&Z. So it is for the betterment of the town. And again, I'll say that, you know, your property, I've been past it, I've seen the artificial grass. I was objecting to it when it went down, but overall, I think it really looks great. But unfortunately, yours is the exception, not what we see in most of these instances.
Then why wouldn't you support an ordinance that would match the look of John's grass?
Well, unfortunately, the ordinance that we're looking for does not include the exceptional job that John did.
Salem, did you want to say something?
Yeah.
I think you gotta actually walk up.
I'm just curious. I'm in a condominium association. I could do without the grass, but 147 unit owners like grass. I'm curious, if someone wants to build a house in Ocean Ridge, they don't want grass. They just want whatever's there, whatever the dirt. The town could impose upon them, they have to put grass?
Yes.
Okay. I guess that's the answer.
Can I comment to that, since you're letting everybody else comment?
Well, I agree with what Mr. Stetson said. This is that overreach, and where's it end?
Yeah.
That's why I think.
But
it's
I was just going to
important.
point out that there are options that are natural and xeriscape that require virtually no fertilizer and no water, ground cover, that are not farm-produced grass and not synthetic. But people don't want to go for it. There's all kinds of options. Basket grass is a natural grass, Fakahatchee grass. There are other options besides these two options, and you couldn't prohibit them because the code requires water efficiency and native plants. They support native plants in your own code.
Thanks, Terry. Yes.
Stella Kolb, 204 Beachway. I'm just listening to this and wondering from a legal point of view, Mr. Attorney, what is the ramifications to the town if, say, I had grass already and now I'm going to sue you because you're making me take it off my property? Does this ordinance protect the town is what I'm asking.
You mean remove the artificial turf?
Can you make me remove it if this is my property?
Well, and basically, there's a line of cases out there that if you provide for an adequate amortization period, which that's why I like 10 years.
Okay.
I like that term because in a lot of cases, you know, they talk about different time frames, and normally the time frame is there in order for the person to basically recoup the value of what they put down.
Okay.
So, I mean, could you have a shorter time frame? I guess you could. I normally like, you know, I don't like to really see anything under 10. I just, you know, I think that's a good number there that is very defensible.
Okay.
Yes, Peter.
Pete Burling, 7 Osprey Drive, and I have no interest in artificial turf, but I do have an interest in the public principle that's being served here, and frankly, I'm hopelessly confused. Steve keeps raising this issue of visibility from a public right-of-way or other place where public interests are expected to be seen. I mean, maybe even the next-door neighbor from their second-story window, they have a right to not look down on something. But Steve keeps asking the question, which comes back to, why don't you just have an ordinance that says no artificial turf shall be installed where it may be seen from a point of public existence. I will just leave that. I don't get it.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Thank you.
I guess the question comes down to me is, then I think there are no parameters, and the only reason we started to even put parameters in is because these were sprouting up left, right, and center, so that's number one. Number two is, as you as a property owner, and as a honest property owner could comply with everything, and the next guy comes and he says, well, I don't like this ficus hedge that's in front of my house that shades all my grass, I'm ripping this ficus hedge out, and then what are the ramifications to that? Do then, as a town, you have to sue them and ask them to take it up? Do you have to ask them to replant? How tall is the planting? How far off the ground can it be? I think it opens, we have to have some lines in the sand, and that's kind of what ordinances are.
What, are you talking about the grass or the hedge?
The grass.
The screening she's referring to.
The screening is now gone. The new
Right.
resident comes in, the screening's gone. Now what do we do as a town?
But if they have artificial?
Yeah.
They can't, by the ordinance, it's now visible, they can't do that.
Okay, so now you have new property owners that are, I think it creates more.
It doesn't create it all, if
It
it's
does.
non-visible, it's non-visible, that's pretty simple.
So, again, then I go back to my thing, do you want a shed in your front yard? I mean, where do we start to draw the line? We do have ordinances about different things that can be visible, even non-visible on somebody's property. And that's what has created and kept the character of our town. I use your same principle. Once you start chipping away and you take away some of these ordinances, then.
We're not taking away anything, we're adding ordinances.
I know that, Steve.
Okay.
But if you start to not have ordinances to protect problematic situations that are showing up, then I think it erodes the ones that we have that will be challenged even more. I mean, we are a town, we have to have rules, and, for people who feel that they want to have no rules, there's areas of unincorporated county that they can live in,
We're not saying that, Christine, that's ridiculous, Steve. It's very simple, we would disagree. You want rules to dictate exactly 25%. I'm saying if you can't see it, we're fine. But I will be outvoted. So it's okay. Any other public comment?
Polly Joa, 35 Hersey Drive. I have a question, in listening to all the conversation, I know minds are made up, but if the intent for side and backyard is so it can't be viewed, then what's the point of the 25%? What you're saying is the residents only get to control 25% of their yard, the town controls the other 75%.
Yep. Mark? Yes. Somebody raised their hand.
Hi, Sarah Stein, 16th Fan. I have a question regarding the chemicals that we have to use in order to sustain our grass. I'm against chemicals. I don't like them in my environment. And I have neighbors who have chinch bugs. And I keep getting infested with, the things that my neighbors don't control. So I would like to do xeriscape. I would like to do, natural plants that can be sustained by low water, less chemicals. Would that be allowed?
Well,
Okay, so-
Well, Sarah couldn't dictate to her neighbor what to do.
Of course not.
You could have told her to put an artificial turf and all that.
But I wouldn't. But I'm just saying, if you have to have grass it's expensive. It's becomes a burden really, because when you're away and you come back and you have all these bugs and environmental things that you didn't even really get on purpose, and they're not actually yours. So xeriscape would be good. So are we going to define that? I mean,
It's up to
regulate
individual
it, or
homeowners, what they decide on the xeriscape.
so that's like free then, a freedom. That's like
Yes.
a freedom
Free
for each
pass.
person. Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, do we hear a motion on 2019-15? No motion, great.
No, I was just looking at the reader here. I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2019-15.
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those not in favor signify by saying nay. Nay. 3 to 1. Okay, that was the long one. Okay, item number 5, second reading and adoption of ordinance number 2019-14. An ordinance of the Town of Ocean Ridge amending its code of ordinances, buildings, and building regulations. Carla?
Ordinance number 2019-14, an ordinance of the Town of Ocean Ridge, Florida, amending its code of ordinances by amending Chapter 67, Building and Building Relations, Article 3, Technical Codes and Other Construction Standards, Division 1, generally, Section 67-32, floor elevations, to clarify the maximum finished floor elevation, providing for codification, repeal of conflicting ordinances, their ability, and an effective date.
Okay, we've been through this before a few times. Brian, you got anything to add to it?
No, I mean, basically, this just provides that in those certain very rare situations that this allows in the code that when the required minimum elevation is higher than the maximum elevation, the minimum elevation becomes the maximum elevation. And that's for finished floors, so, yeah.
On that note, I'll ask for any
I know.
comments.
Not
Okay,
to confuse you.
Commission comment? Okay, do I hear a motion?
So moved that we pass ordinance number 2019-14
On second reading.
on second reading.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. All right, item number 6, schedule a workshop with my favorite people, planning and zoning. So I guess there were 2 dates available?
Yeah, so at the last planning and zoning meeting, the P and Z requested that we hold a joint workshop, or that they hold a joint workshop with the town commission for the purpose of discussing design guidelines for the town. We had originally recommended that we do that on February 10th. However, I heard back from Commissioner Bessler that he is out of town between February 4th and 11th. So we kind of want to regroup maybe and pick a different date when he can attend.
So we'll wait for his options?
He said he's out February 4th through 11th. He could attend any other time other
Okay.
than that.
So do we have a calendar in front of us?
What day of the week does P and Z usually meet?
Monday, right?
They usually meet on a Monday.
Early.
Or-
Yes, early.
Yeah, but it was 9:30 in the original proposal, right?
Because
Yeah.
we could meet after P and Z's regular
Correct.
meeting, correct?
Yes.
Do you guys have a meeting on the 17th? St. Patty's Day?
That's President's Day.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I confused the two. Penny, do you know when your meetings are?
We have a meeting on the 10th.
But that doesn't work for Phil.
Right,
Right.
Phil's out of town.
Do you happen to know your next meeting?
Yes, that would be on March 16th.
Is that too long a delay?
No.
Can I just,
Sure.
again, Mark Marsh. The reason we've suggested a workshop is because most municipalities usually set up their planning boards and their town council or commission for open discussion. What we've been doing since we're, I don't want to say putting more regulations, but getting more concerned about what the community looks like through the P and Z, instead of having this thing ping pong back and forth between your formal meeting and our formal meeting, it's a lot more productive to have a combined meeting where you sit there, we sit here, we're so subservient, and
Let's sit together.
we can throw things quickly that way. It just is a lot, and we actually had one, if you recall, most of you, when P and Z board was getting, this whole beautification set up, and it was very productive and helpful. So that's all we request, and I would like to see it at least twice a year, if not.
So the idea is to get everyone sitting down together and decide what the priorities are and what we're
Correct.
concerned about.
Right.
Which will save you guys time.
And focus on what, on everybody's concern list at the time. So it's a better way to get everybody involved, and obviously if the public can come and, I think it's far more productive, but I think it should be on a regular basis. Just
So
so we,
you want to try to set the first one for March 16th at 9:30? And then, depending
If you're all
upon
available.
Phil.
That's the one that I will not be here for, that spring break. So I will not be in town on March 16th. Is it possible to?
Right, do we need to, I mean, I know the obvious choices were pre-commission or post P and Z. Could we do something just specifically for the workshop
Yes.
without having to work around that?
Yes.
So we need to know what Phil's dates are. You said 11 through something or what have you. Maybe we can have it sooner that way.
He ends on the 11th, right?
Yeah, he's out the 4th through the 11th of February.
It'd be nice to do a February date to get this.
That's what I'm
moving
thinking,
ahead,
get it
yeah.
going forward.
February 12th?
I'd like to see us
Just had
have the
surgery.
meeting in the evening hours so that we're not forced with Mark having to go to work at 10 o'clock. Or if we could start it in the afternoon maybe so that we have time to, we can take the time that we need to. And we're not,
Whatever
You want to
works
shoot
for
for
everybody.
need to leave.
Feb. 24th? Are you back, Penny, from
I'm here.
You're saying February 4th?
24th?
February 24th, which is
That's a Monday.
a Monday, right.
So why don't we tentatively say, you want to move it up, or you want to keep it at 6?
I think,
wanna do 5?
I'm retired, so I'm.
4 or 5?
Right.
fine.
Maybe
4 o'clock.
late afternoon so that if it
4.
runs a little while, it doesn't,
Yeah.
Okay.
right?
So 4 o'clock
like 4-ish?
on,
Is that okay with P and Z people?
well, we'll find out. Tracy will,
Yeah, just send it
Is it
around.
okay with you three?
good for you, Mark? Yeah.
Penny?
Yes.
1, 2, 3. So you just need 2 more of your members.
Jared and Dave.
February 4th at
No, 24th.
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 At 4.
4.
24 at 4.
I will still be on the commission at that point, but I would like to have Martin be able to join that meeting so that we can get and allow him
It'll be
to
open
have
to the
input.
public.
He can as the public. He can't have input as a commissioner at that point, but he can certainly observe and speak
He can raise
as a
his
public
hand and
member.
come up to the podium. Okay.
So do we need a motion on this?
No, just a
Sounds good.
consensus.
Discussion.
Right.
Consensus
Right.
is fine.
All right, so Tracy's going to, we're tentatively scheduled 24th at
Yes.
4 February. And then if problems arise, you'll let us know.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, town managers report.
Okay, first off, I just want to congratulate Commissioner Hurlbert and Commissioner-elect Vichelek for holding a seat and filling a new seat as of March 18th. Congratulations. We received our annual Truth and Millage certification letter from the Department of Revenue certifying that we're in compliance with all state statutes and regulations regarding our budget process for FY20. As you all know, the budget process is a very long process. We have to abide by many statutes, and we are good to go for FY20. Next item, FEMA will be meeting with town staff on January 8th for a scoping session in reference to our Hurricane Dorian grant application. We won't expect to receive grant funding during this fiscal year for Hurricane Dorian, as the process takes over a year to complete, sometimes even 2 years to complete a grant process. And we're still waiting for Hurricane Irma grant funding, even though they've obligated that to us already. We're still waiting for the funding. We received the preliminary copies of the flood insurance rate map and the flood insurance study. Those are in my office if you would like to review them. Staff will be reviewing the maps to identify any changes or corrections to non-technical information such as our corporate limits and road names on the maps and the FIS report. And if we find anything, we will give that information to FEMA before the next process, which will be the public open houses, which will be held on February 4th from 4 to 7 and February 5th from 9 to noon. And that will be held at the Mary V. McDonald Wilson Center in West Palm Beach. And this is, this information is on our website for the public. You're invited to attend those meetings, and they will look up your property and give you information on the new flood maps and how it relates to your property. The last item I have is Martin Bichalek has resigned from the Board of Adjustment since he will be serving on the Town Commission beginning March 18th. And also Bruce Gimme has moved out of Ocean Ridge, so he had to resign from the board as well. We will announce the openings on the Town Commission agenda next month, and we'll post those openings with our normal method of advertising. Board appointments normally occur in April. However, due to the vacancies, we should appoint 2 members in March due to our codes, even though we don't have any sense of urgency because we have no applications to go in front of the board. So it will be your discretion if you want to make those appointments in March, or do you want to wait until your new commission is seated to make appointments to that board?
Are these regular spots, or is it one regular
Yes.
and one, so they're both regular?
Were you an alternative or regular? Martin, yeah.
He's regular.
So if we decided to delay until the new commission was seated,
Yeah.
could the alternates take the position of the regulars?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and there's no urgency, we have no applications in right now. Even if we received an application tomorrow, there's a timeline where we have to advertise and all that. So we don't think we're gonna have any reason for a meeting in March anyway.
So could we, gain consensus tonight to just say the 2 alternates are now?
Temporarily?
Or, yeah.
Is that,
Yeah.
Ryan, is that okay? We just say the alternate temporarily?
Your code says you have to fill within 30 days, however, it's,
Well, we would be filling within 30 days, right?
yeah, sort of, not
Yeah,
really.
not really.
Right.
Not really.
I guess my question is, if they appoint, this time, is the appointment only going to April, and then they're going to have to appoint again?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's the issue.
So I think,
Yeah.
and correct me if I'm wrong, Christine, you're saying let's do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it lasts until April, and then in April, we'll,
Right.
the whole kit and caboodle's up again.
Appoint the alternates.
Do we have
Yes.
consensus on that?
Yeah.
And the alternates are? Bob?
And Kimberly Duke Pompeo.
I guess we should ask her if she wants it.
Well, Tracy will get back to us if there's a
Right.
problem.
Yeah, we'll get back
It's
to
only
you.
a couple months with no variances. in the laws
Congratulations,
anyway.
Bob.
Yeah.
That's right.
This is your second appointment? So one other thing, Tracy, at the February meeting, is that Grant Writer going to be here? The town meeting, you know, the gentleman. that-
We're not sure yet, so but he is going to be at the Septic to Sewer Committee meeting that's coming up.
But man, all the
I-
commissioners were
yeah.
interested in listening to it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
I'm
pretty
trying to schedule that, so.
Okay. Okay, town attorney?
No report.
Okay, police chief?
As you know, I'm here on behalf of Chief Hutchins. He's at the Florida Police Chiefs Association for a couple days, so I believe he'll be back on Wednesday. As you know, contained within your agenda is all of the monthly reports for fire, EMS, and law enforcement. If you have any questions about any of those, I'll be more than happy to answer them for you, or any other questions that you may have for the police department.
How's Brian going?
It's going very well, sir. Lots of parking citations are being issued, and residents are extremely happy.
Who gets the
with
revenue
that.
from that?
It goes back to Brian.
Oh.
It's de minimis.
Are you getting those construction vehicles actually on the edge?
I have written a few of them.
So is the report in here the new reporting system that Boynton is now using?
At this point, that's the best information we could gather from them. As you know, we have a new fire chief there, and to communicate with him has been rough this month because obviously he's taken on a huge responsibility and task within his own department. But the numbers that you have within the report are the best numbers we could obtain. I don't know if they're gonna look the same way next month or not.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question.
And nothing was outside of the response time that would cause concern?
And any of the times that appeared to be lengthy in the reports, we checked with our system to verify that the numbers were either skewed or inaccurate on their reports. And the times that we document on our side of our reporting system are all well within the normal time responses that we would have from them.
Okay, and are we still looking at an April
That's Feb.
open?
That's
Or
February.
what, February. Are we looking at a February opening for the new station?
I don't know if it's changed, but, I mean, from what I'm looking at, they still have a lot to do for
Yeah.
it to happen that quickly. So, that may be their date, but I'm not gonna say
probably
that
not.
that's probably gonna be postponed at least another 30 to 60 days beyond that.
Christine, I'll check with Lori and see what the timeline is.
Yeah, we should have monthly updates on that at our meetings.
Yeah, I thought they were shooting for Feb. What, the program, Stop the Bleed and
The Stop the Bleed will be happening.
Save a Life, I think.
I'll tell you in just a second, I believe it's the 20th. The 23rd from 6 PM until whenever it's done. It'll probably be at least a 2-hour.
It's Save a Life, Stop the Bleed.
Correct.
So it's worth going on the website, particularly if a family member you know is in poor health. Because it's since we don't have an in-town EMT service or firehouse, the citizens can be trained to save lives, basically.
Lieutenant Jones, you need an RSVP for that?
We did ask for RSVPs. Obviously, the more we get ahead of time, the more we'll be able to plan accordingly to how much room we need or how we set the room up. But in essence, it's a first responder basic program for people, and it is exactly what it says, Stop the Bleed. What is the priority for care, and what do we do to help folks? And that's what we want to get out to the public. As many of you probably are aware, there's several of us in the police department that are EMTs, and we respond to those medical calls just like Boynton Fire Rescue does. And we do have a lot of resources available to us in our patrol cars. But just because we're responding doesn't mean it won't take us 2 or 3 minutes to get to you. And a lot can happen in a 2 to 3 minute time frame. So we just want you to be as well prepared as you can be so that we can assist you, help you, and then obviously fire rescue can come on scene and take care of you in a much more advanced way.
And you don't need any equipment. It's just teaching you how to use your hands, maybe a household object or
Correct,
two,
towels
to save
or whatever.
somebody
Something at
from
home.
bleeding out or dying of heart failure before the professionals get there.
Correct.
Stabilization.
Can I ask one quick question about the helicopter activities that have been going on the last couple of nights? Is that something you could talk about, or?
We don't have any plans or operations that are actually being
They're shining their light down.
correct.
on
It is the Coast Guard and it's also Customs. We are aware that Customs, this is a busy time frame for them, typically the holidays and just after the holidays. And also the fact that we have the president in town.
But
So,
he's gone by the time due.
but they are paying special attention to our waterways, so we know that. We have meetings with Customs and Border Patrol agents on a regular basis. And
Disturbing our beach buddies.
they definitely are. They're looking for anybody who's, got a burn pile going. Or they're definitely not worried about us, I promise.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So the 23rd is this month.
Yeah, Jan 23rd.
Correct.
I think there was the following Feb, but whatever, it's a skip. But I definitely would encourage people to check it out. Wayne?
Your report's in front of you. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to take a look at that. And we've got code enforcement hearing tomorrow, if anyone, 10 o'clock. That's about it.
Any questions for Wayne?
No.
Okay, Tracy, this wraps up my schedule. We done?
I have a comment.
Yep.
If you don't mind. As many of you may remember, before I was elected to the commission, I used to follow Terry Brown at every meeting because he would always get up and speak, and so I always followed him, and he did the same thing tonight. He kind of stole my thunder. I appreciate your comments, Terry, but what I wanted to say was that we were front page news on the January 2nd edition of the Palm Beach Post. I can't tell you guys how proud I was to see that Ocean Ridge recognized with 6 other cities in Palm Beach County for joining forces in a year-long comprehensive review on climate change impacts. I mean, this is a big deal for a little city like Ocean Ridge to do it. While we may not all agree, as example of this evening, this article does recognize a forward-thinking commitment and leadership of our town commission and administrative staff to provide the resources necessary to help our town prepare for a changing climate. So I just am really pleased to see that we're getting the recognition that we deserve for being out front. So thank you all very much.
Okay, on that note, meeting's adjourned.